Thank you so much for joining us. For those of you who are here at this early hour, I apologize for the crazy hair. I have not showered yet. It's about right at 5 a.m. So when I woke up this morning, I did not want to wake up my wife. You're here for Microsoft Fabric, Copilots, and Data Agents. This is brought to you by Coffee, myself, Bradley Ball, and my good friend, Neeraj Jhaveri. Quick introductions of ourselves. So I'm not going to leave this up very long. My LinkedIn is on the page. If you want to read more about me, you absolutely can. I work for Microsoft. I've been here for about a decade, and now I'm going to pass it over to you, Neeraj.
Same here. I work for Microsoft, one of the colleague of Brad, and mostly on the data analytical side is the experience that I have for the last 20 years. And we both own Tales from the Field. Next slide to you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And so speaking of Tales from the Field, this is our YouTube channel. We put videos out here on a weekly basis. We're actually going 2 weeks without a video right now, but that's because I was very, very ill and ended up in urgent care when I came back from DataCon, but I'm doing much better. So we're going to have our live stream with the product group, and hopefully I will have a video out next week. But when we try and have these monthly live streams with product groups, so if you get a chance, please do join us. All you need is a YouTube account. You'll be able to hop on. This month, we're going to have the wonderful Bradley Shat and Alex Powers and the Mark Price Mayer from the Microsoft Fabric CAT team. And of course, they're covering data warehousing areas, data flows, data pipelines, and mirroring all up. So it'll be a real good time, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern on Tuesday. All right, here's our agenda, Microsoft Fabric. We're going to talk Copilots in Microsoft Fabric and also data agents. Now, I know this is the session of the talk. We're going to scratch all the surface with this, but then we're going to dive into AI functions and Power BI Copilot, because since we submitted this talk, we've got a whole lot of new functionality that has been released in Microsoft Fabric that really applies to the way that we use AI. We wanted to make sure and get this in and have some good examples and some good demos for you. So I am going to presume that you are familiar with Microsoft Fabric, but if we look at Microsoft Fabric, it's an all-out SaaS platform. As you can see, we have multiple different tools integrated, so that way you have an all-in-one experience to be able to get data via data pipelines, data flows. If you're ingesting real-time data, you have that through event streams. You could utilize KQL databases. We could also have data activator to be able to react to data changes. We have databases, Cosmos database, as well as Fabric SQL database in Microsoft Fabric now. Of course, the analytics platforms that you are already familiar with the MPP data warehouse and also data engineering and notebooks, industry solutions, Power BI. We are going to focus in on Copilot and Fabric very specifically. Of course, this is built on OneLake. And we do have Microsoft Purview integration in there. Now, you'll notice there is a link on the top right corner, github.com SQLballs Microsoft Fabric Precon. This is a precon that myself, Neeraj Jhaveri, Bradley Shat from the CAT team, Buck Woody, who is, perpetually at Microsoft for the last 30 years, amazing human being all around, but also currently he is on the CAT team for the Fabric SQL database team. And then our good friend Josh Ludeman. We all pitched in on this, and we have presented this at multiple conferences, but every time we present it, we update it. I just presented this at DataCon in Seattle in June, and we did our most recent refresh of this. We want you to take this. This uses all of the Microsoft Learn. So as long as you have access to a Fabric capacity, you can get a lot of hands-on training with this, using our documentation, going through here. If you have any questions, hit us up on LinkedIn. We are more than happy, but take this, run your colleagues through it. The goal is for you to be able to get hands-on experience with Microsoft Fabric so you can get more familiar with it. So if you need that, please utilize the link up at the top. And that GitHub repository is yours to fork and do whatever you would like with it. Okay, now let's get into copilots and data agents very specifically. My goal is going to be to get out of the deck as quickly as possible and into demos because that's where all the fun is. So Copilot in Microsoft Fabric. These are the typical marketing slides: supercharge productivity, upload skills, discover insights. But here's the thing I really want to make sure that you understand is that Copilot is integrated into every single Fabric experience. Now, Copilot can also get rather confusing. If you see Copilot absolutely everywhere and sometimes wonder why they're not connected, I'm going to explain why. Um, Microsoft did not do ourselves any favors by naming every single agent that we use Copilot. It is consistent, but we didn't do any favors. And the reason I'm going to say this is because we have a Copilot in Data Factory and Data Flow Gen 2 and Data Pipelines and Data Warehouse and Data Science and Real-Time Intelligence and also in Power BI. And we're going to dive into each of these. The thing I want you to keep in mind is it is an LLM. It's an LLM we're utilizing, but it is specifically tuned to that experience. For example, if you were using Copilot in Microsoft Word or Copilot in Microsoft PowerPoint, those models are specifically tuned to help you with that service. They have a knowledge base of Word. They have a knowledge base of PowerPoint. But if you think about it, I don't need a knowledge base of PowerPoint in Microsoft Word. I don't need a knowledge base of Data Flow Gen 2 in PowerPoint. So same for each of these services. This is a Copilot experience specifically to help you to be able to code faster, to be able to fix errors within code, to be able to find information about and summarize your data very, very quickly. But they are a specific experience in each one of these. And so when you go into them, the goal of the Copilot is for it to be able to help you accomplish whatever it is that you're trying to do. Understand, process information, write code, generate code. It's there to help you be more efficient and to also be able to cross-check things. I mean, I don't know about you, but my favorite Copilot experience is definitely the fix errors in Fabric notebooks. Where has that been all my life? I can't tell you how many times I've written PySpark code and I thought I got it right on the first try and I get a little error. The fact that I can just hit a button and it will fix the error for me, absolutely fantastic. Lovely, lovely stuff. And this is very different from a data agent. And what we need to understand is when we put together a data agent experience that we have in Microsoft Fabric really allows us to be able to create a RAG pattern, a retrieval augmentation generation pattern, very, very quickly. This is one of the things that previously it was rather complicated to do. We could do it via LangChain. We could do it via the semantic kernel. We could create an application to be able to process this. But what we would have to do is we would have to create prompts. We would have to set security boundaries and rules. And then we would also have to have perhaps some AI instructions. And then that would limit the number of tokens or characters that we could pass along to a model to be able to get it to return information. We also had to load up a specific data source. And then we had to feed the data source to the RAG agent, because the whole premise would be that we could take our data and very, very quickly we could, well, maybe not quickly, depends on your level of experience, right? But what we could do is we could begin to ask questions of an LLM about our data to be able to help us achieve additional insights. Now, what the data agent does, well, it says I'm fully charged. What the data agent does is it allows us to be able to create this RAG pattern very quickly against our data that we already have preloaded in Fabric. And so the way that we would go about this is first, we're going to create the data agent. We're going to add selected data sources. And currently within Microsoft Fabric, we have access to the Lakehouse, to the Warehouse, to Semantic Models, and also to the Event House KQL Databases. And then what we'll do is typically we'll do a table selection. Now, by default, if you do not do a table selection, it will select all objects. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And what we can do is we can then configure it. We can add AI instructions. We could add example queries. I've got some videos on our channel where we dive into this a bit more when it was still called an AI skill before it was a data agent. And I show how I can answer specific questions and put in specific SQL queries, T-SQL queries to be able to get the information we want. And then the agent would use that information and derive it. And it could even pull similar information using similar subqueries. And I did a rather complicated one where I did a correlated subquery to be able to get that information. And then we have the capability to publish this. Now, this can be shared with consumers. I know as of right now, we have announced that if you're using, oh, I'm blanking on it, Neeraj, help me out. I think it's AI Foundry. We can publish this via AI Foundry.
Correct. That's through AI Foundry. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. So it's AI Foundry. We've got so many different things, Copilot Studio, all those things, right? You publish this right now. You can get access to this via AI Foundry. So you could actually have an agent talking to an agent, and then you could publish this to have it be more forward facing. You can access it via a notebook. And of course, you could also, and this is one of the things I'm seeing customers do quite often, is when they will deploy an app and they deploy a report with a semantic model, they also deploy an agent. So that way they can ask questions and have a more chat-based experience about the data within the report. Also, that gets us into our final demo that we'll go into, which is going to be Power BI Copilot, which is actually a new experience. And I want to make sure that we go into it, but it really takes the power of what we have with data agents and it takes it to the next level. So with data agents, keep in mind, we need a paid capacity, F2 or higher. And that was an announcement that was actually made in late April. So we're going to make sure and focus on that a little bit. All these initial demos you're going to see me do are going to be with an F2 capacity. So that way that hey, all of this is possible and all of this is accessible via an F2. Keep in mind, there are some admin functionalities that must be enabled with your tenant. Cross-geo processing for AI must be enabled. Storing for AI is enabled. And you have to have at least one supported source to be able to create a data agent. The Power BI semantic models also must have the XMLA endpoint tenant switch enabled in order to be able to use Power BI semantic models for their own data sources. Okay, let's get into the demo. So this is my Azure portal, and you can see in my Azure portal that I'm using a SKU as an F2. So this is an F2 capacity. And I'm also going to show you in the workspace how I validate this. I'm going to go into my workspace, my TF dev, and you can see that this is my F2 capacity that I'm utilizing. Now, let's go and look at some of the Copilot experiences. So I'm going to go into a notebook, and this is a notebook I use in another session, Harness the Power of Notebooks, where I use Copilot to be able to access everything. And you'll see that we've got two different ways to access Copilot. One, we've got Copilot that we can have as a pop-out chat, and then we've also got it within the actual cell that we can utilize. Now, what I'm going to do is I need to first initialize my Spark notebook, because if it's not running, I can't run Copilot. Just kind of type in a quick comment, say hello, and let it spin up the Spark session. And then I'm going to ask it to load some data for me. So I'm going to say load table DBO movie info. And I want it to show me the data in a data frame. And I want to name the data frame movie info. It's going to process, it's going to show me the code. And I do love this. This is a very similar experience if you're familiar with Databricks, where if it's going to replace code, it lets you see and accept it. And you can see it's written this code for me to be able to process the data frame, be able to load it, and then be able to display it. Okay, so that is Copilot specifically within a notebook. Now let's go over and let's look at it with another experience. I'm going to go to a KQL query set. And this is a query set that I've already got set up in a demo that I do when I track the International Space Station. And I'm going to turn on Copilot. I'm going to come over here and say, what rows do I have in the ISS Astros table? It will look at the metadata structure and it will give me a query. I can insert it, and then I can go ahead and run and process this. And what I'm doing is I'm getting a list of the information in the Astros table. Again, so let's go ahead and let's look at another experience. So now let's take a look at Warehouse. In Warehouse, you can see that there's an option where I can go into the warehouse. Let's go ahead and let's open up my DBO schema so I can see some of my tables that I have in place. I've got baseball roster. I'm going to go to new query SQL. I can also make a Copilot, but as you can see, I can also use plain English. I just do the dash, and then I'm going to say select from baseball rosters. And show me the rows for CHN 2016 on baseball rosters. And it's going to make the query for me. And of course, this is for the Chicago Cubs. They won the World Series in 2016. So greatest roster in the history of baseball right here. But this is how I can use Copilot within my data warehouse. Now let's take a look at a different experience. Let's go ahead and let's create a data flow gen 2. I'm going to create a data flow gen 2. I'm going to access my Copilot. And in here, I'm going to say something like create a date dimension table, have a range of years from 1921 to 2030. Go ahead and hit enter on this. And we've all had to create date dimensions before. We've had scripts where we've had to do it. And you can see very quickly it generates this for me. It gives me every applied step. If I wanted to add holidays or other functionality, I could also do that. I would just need to go through Copilot. You can see I can also go over to Data Agent. So let's do a quick Data Agent preview. We go ahead and title this Copilot test, and I go and I get a data source. You can see there's a lot of data sources I have access to that I could pull in to create my RAG pattern very quickly. I've got my KQL, my semantic models. I'm going to select my baseball data set semantic model from a baseball report that I have up in Power BI. And I'm going to leave it blank so that way it can access all of the individual tables. And I'm going to say what percentage of, I would actually like to get the win-loss, of the wins over total games. And then I also want the losses over total games for the Chicago Cubs in 2016, the year that they won the World Series. So they should obviously have a winning record here. Very conversational. I just asked the question, and all I've done is add my data source. But this is that RAG pattern that previously I would have to do so much to be able to create. And you can see the data set comes back. It shows me the Chicago Cubs had a total of 103 wins and 58 losses, and it even calculates the win-loss percentage for me. So I can see that the win-loss percentage is here based off the data. And I didn't necessarily say the win-loss percentage, right? It inferred this from the text that I put in place. So I love how this experience is very conversational. As you can see up at the top, there's AI instructions. I can add more instructions to this if I wanted to be able to add some prompting instructions to be able to say, here's some similar terms that we want. Here's the way I want you to understand and process this. And I could also, if I needed to, add additional data sources. I don't just have to have a semantic model. I could add a KQL database to this, or I could add a data warehouse to this. And then I could add specific queries to tune to questions if I felt like I wasn't getting the answers back in the correct format I wanted. This RAG pattern that we can create so quickly is really, when we talk about how Power BI did the democratization of visualization, this is the democratization of data science for us to be able to get these RAG patterns so quickly. Okay. So next up, let's get into some of this new functionality that we've got within the last 6 months. The next thing I want to cover is AI functions. Now you're going to see this expand. We do have blogs out there where we have, I believe there's a private preview currently going underway for data warehouse. And then right now we do have this active within the notebook and the engineering experience. But the wonderful thing is with essentially one line of code, I can perform all of these different functions to be able to enrich data sets that I have where I couldn't previously do this. So for example, let's dive right into a demo. I'm in a notebook, and the first thing I need to do is I do have to configure this. I'm going to fast forward through this a bit because this is going to take a couple minutes for us to be able to do. And then you can see that I'm specifying a specific model, GPT 3.5 Turbo. You will be able to specify this in the future. We had Nelly Gustafsson on one of our live streams, and we asked some questions about this, I want to say back in March. And the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to calculate similarity. You can see I create a data frame here. I've got first name, last name, and I've got company. Bill Gates, Bill Hader, Satya, Joan of Arc. And then I'm passing through to find a similarity between name and companies. And you can see I'm putting in more than one column name, and it gives me a matching similarity. Very interestingly, because the companies are different, you can see Bill Gates and Bill Hader, even though their names are very similar, Bill Gates and Satya actually have a higher similarity than Bill Hader. Classification with text. I absolutely love this one. This is just an example of here's some reviews and some information, and we've said label this by kitchen, bedroom, garage, or other. Think of how you could very quickly be able to add additional context by labeling or categorizing this. This is essentially a classification algorithm that we are running to be able to find this different information. I work with customers all the time where we're looking for data quality, and we're looking at how do we categorize this information very quickly? How do we get this to be able to pull back? And what's interesting is we can find like similarities by having the model process this information for us. Detect sentiment. I remember when detecting sentiment would require us to train a model, pass through a certain amount of the data, validate that the sentiment was being interpreted correctly, and then it would also require us to feed everything back through. Well, these are just reviews. And I can see that with this one line of code where I say, take these reviews, give me an output on sentiment, I can get negative, positive, mixed, and neutral based off the sentiment that is coming through. So very, very simple compared to what we could previously do. And again, if you've got data sitting within your lakehouse, you have the capability to enrich that data set if you have sentiment. And this could be used on a host of other types of data. AI extracts, I found this very interesting. If I wanted to extract fields from text instead of having to parse or put together some complicated logic for regex where I've already processed this, I could say extract these things, a name, profession, and city, and you can see how it entered them each as different columns. MJ Lee lives in Tucson, Arizona, works as a software engineer for Microsoft. Well, we have MJ Lee, we have software engineer, and we have a city that we've extracted from this text in a very, very simple way for us to be able to extract this data that could then make this more indexable, searchable, or even filterable based off how we want to use this within a report. Fixing AI grammar, I probably could have used that in this last sentence that I just said. Again, brought to you by coffee. First time I looked at this, I went, why do we need spell check? But one of the things I thought about was, well, if I'm going to classify, I'm going to look at this, I might want to be able to fix spell check corrections, get the corrected, but still keep the original text that consumer had put into place. And then I can use that corrected grammar to be able to do my classification or my categorization, or to be able to pull out specific fields from that information. Summarization, we could also take complex documents, think about feeding in things like PDFs, where we may have documents that we need to process, and how we could summarize the information. We pull the text from that, and then we say, give me a summarization of what this is. I worked with a company once, and they were into mergers and acquisitions. And one of the things they did was they pulled all the different stock information from companies they were looking at, and they were looking at risks. And one of the things they really wanted to do was know, how can I pull out this text and how can I evaluate the risk associated with this? Well, you could do that with a customized prompt that we have a little bit further down at the bottom. But one of the first things we would do is we would look at summarizing what the risks actually were that we extracted from that text. So again, think about it. If you've got a whole bunch of documents or you've got loose text sitting within your data lake, this enrichment is right there. Text AI translate. I do a lot of scraping of sentiment data, or at least I used to when you could do that, and that option was there. But not everything I receive is in English. So perhaps I would like to be able to understand what the comments are being said. So when I look at the sentiment score, I can understand how is this being processed. Or perhaps you've got an audience in one country and your executives are sitting in another, or your business analyst, and you want to be able to understand what is the feedback that your customers are saying. Again, the capability to enrich your data by taking and translating to a particular language what you would like is fantastic. Generate an AI response. This is generating advertising. But that risk score that we were talking about, I could just as easily ask an AI model to say, looking at this summarized text, what is the risk? And I could give it additional context to be able to say, this is whether I want the risk to be 1 through 10, and these things are evaluated in this particular way. The capability to use these AI functions to enrich the data that we have within our lakehouse right now, absolutely amazing stuff. And like I said, this is in private preview right now for Data Warehouse. That's already on a blog that has been announced. So just imagine if you have this data within your data warehouse, very soon you're going to be able to do this via T-SQL query as well. Really amazing stuff when you think about the capabilities that we're taking and within one line of code that we're making available in Microsoft Fabric. All right, so next up, I've got Power BI Copilot. Neeraj, I can't see the screen right now. How are we doing? Any questions, anything that
No.
we want to address?
Right now, no, there's no questions in there.
Okay, doing good. You got it, my friend. I'm going to keep rocking and rolling. Okay, so Power BI Copilot. There's a couple prerequisites. We're going to hit this in the demo video. One of the things to keep in mind is, again, this requires a paid capacity, you also need to make sure that your capacity is in one of the listed regions in the Fabric region availability document. So this is not going to be in every single region. Also, one of the things that you want to keep in mind, especially for our friends that need to look at data sovereignty rules, data can be sent to OpenAI and can be processed outside the tenant's geographical region, compliance boundaries, or national cloud in the Fabric admin portal. So we want to make sure that we understand that where the traffic is. So if we can't enable this within our Fabric tenant, we're not going to be able to use Power BI Copilot. The Copilot in Microsoft Fabric isn't supported on trial stocks. So remember, this is only on peak capacity. So if you have a trial, you're not going to be able to use the Power BI Copilot that we're about to show. But one of the things I want to do is I want to make sure that we walk through this step by step. It isn't supported for sovereign clouds due to GPU. And then in Power BI Desktop, you're going to need to have a minimum of write access to the workspace that we're going to be able to utilize. Now, let's get straight into a demo of this. Now, I'm going to do a little bit of a diagram up front to kind of talk about what we're going to do. We're going to take this on from the developer point of view where we're preparing AI data in Power BI. And what we're going to do is we're going to start out with Power BI Desktop. We're going to be using that to communicate with our workspace. And in our workspace, we want to make sure that the user has read access to semantic models, reports, and apps, and also that we have access potentially to data agents. Remember, we just covered data agents a little while ago, but the Power BI Copilot can use any of these as we're asking it Q&A questions. And remember, this is for our RAG patterns, for our Lakehouse, our KQL database, our warehouse, and also for our semantic models. The Copilot in Power BI, this is going to let the business user discover specific insights and be able to chat back and forth with the data. This is very, very cool stuff. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to run through the end-to-end tutorial that we actually have up online on Learn. Now, there's a couple things we have to set first that must be in place, right? So users can use Copilot and other features powered by OpenAI, and users can access a standalone cross-item Power BI Copilot experience. We need to make sure that these are enabled. Now, when we look at the documentation, we can see that there's a little bit that we've got. We've already covered the introduction. So we're going to start with the Get Started and Copilot for Power BI. Now, the first thing that we have to do is we have to actually download the report to be able to walk through this tutorial. And you can get the sample from our Learn documentation. If you don't want to download it directly from that page, you can also go to the GitHub repository and you can download the Revenue Opportunities Power BI Desktop report. So here we are in the Power BI Desktop report. And what I want to do is I want to take a second for us to look at the data, because understanding the data that we have in the report is really going to help us understand this tutorial and how everything goes. So as you can see, we've got a breakdown of different information. We've got a nice tooltip over the graph to be able to show small, medium business. And if we look at this, we're looking at opportunity analysis, and we're looking at how this is broken down by small, medium, and large, and east, central, and west type of geographies. We've got average opportunity days, revenues. When we look at our data, you can see all of our measures are under a sales measure. And then we've got different data that we have that we can access. This is an import report. So we've got accounts, we've got dates, we've got opportunities, we've got a partners table, a product table, and a sales stages table. So when we look at this and we start to begin to prep this, we're going to first start with the prep data for AI. We're going to have to connect to a workspace. Remember, we need write capabilities, and the workspace must be Copilot enabled. We're going to start by simplifying our data schema. Now we're going to get rid of a surrogate key account ID that we have in accounts. And then in dates, we've got a day sort and a month sort that we use because we haven't figured out a better way to do that in Power BI yet. Again, no shade, but we haven't. But we don't need those columns for AI. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, I can answer particular questions using a particular visual. So I'm going to prep this by saying verified answers. This visualization can answer these questions. How many opportunities are in each sales stage? And then how does the number of opportunities vary by sales stage? And then I'm going to click apply, and then I'm going to click close. If I wanted to, I could edit or I could delete any of the verified answers. But I'm saying, yes, this can be done here. Now you can see I can also get to verified answers from the prep data for AI, and you can see both questions that we already added. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some AI instructions. Now for these, the first up, tailor responses to industry norms for software company sales channel. Sales managers monitor their direct partner channels by tracking opportunities and revenue by region and deal size. Now we've got some specific information. Key earners refers to the top 3 partners by total revenue. And so it's really important that we understand that that gets to our partners table and the revenue. If we ask about clients, customers, or organizations, we're using the account table. For sales cycle questions, use the average opportunity days measure. And this is the measure code associated with that. The opportunity days is synonymous with sales cycle duration or time to close. That's just vernacular. Leads, deals, potential leads all go to the opportunity table. If asked about sales stages, we're looking at the opportunity only. And if the audience is leadership, prioritize revenue amount for these finalized stages. So these are the instructions we're putting in place. And so I can come into Copilot and I can say, what 3 affiliates had the most leads across the Eastern zone? It returns this and I go, okay, it's looking pretty good in desktop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to now publish this. I'm going to publish this to my Power BI tutorial folder. And then I'm going to come in here, a couple more steps we got to take. I'm going to open up the report and I need to go into File, and then I need to go to Settings. I'm going to add a description. And the reason is the description of the report will actually be able to help the model. I'm then going to go into the semantic model. I'm going to add a semantic model description. And then very importantly, I need to come down and say AI preparation. And I need to check that this has been prepared for AI so it can be used by Copilot. Now I'm ready to go. So we go over to Copilot and I say, let's get started. I say, where can I find data about the sales funnel, including opportunities, sales, and goals? And you can see it comes back with the semantic model. It comes back with my report, comes back with some other things from my workspace as well. Provide a detailed summary of the contents of the second item. I need to understand what it contains so I can ask questions. I love that it breaks this down. How many times have you had a Power BI report where somebody goes, go use this Power BI report, but you don't know what it does? The capability to go in and ask a question and say, break this down to me and give me all the information of what's actually in this report to me is a fascinating thing. I don't know about you, but I get this all the time. Microsoft's a big company. And as I do different things, people go, here's this report, look at this. And if you look at this, it breaks everything down, the total opportunity revenue, the pipeline stage. It lets me know where it's getting this information from, what visualization within the report that it's using. Also notice I just said the second item. I could have specified a report, but it was very intuitive. It knew what the second item in the list is. Now, if you'll notice, I can actually click on my report and then I can confirm this, and then I can ask a question about the report. I can say, what was the revenue for each state in the last year? When this runs, this is now running this directly against the report. And if you'll recall, while we did have a state graph, I didn't have it broken down in the same way. And what it's doing is it's taking the information that was in the report, it's presenting it in a new way for me to be able to look at this and then process this. Now, it's showing, where did I get this? I got this from state, and I got this from the total revenue sales measure. And if I want to, I can also then go into the report and I can look at this a little bit deeper, because this Copilot is also embedded within Power BI. So I go up to the Copilot. I typically don't say try it, right? But let's go ahead and say try it because it was already up. You can see I have these options: understand the data, dig deeper, write a summary. And each of these are prepared options that we found users would use quite a bit. So I said, generate a summary. And again, very similar to the experience I could get when I was asking it to explain to me, it gave me this. Now, I do love how it puts a spotlight on the graphic. So as I'm looking at these resources and it's explaining it to me, it's spotlighting the graphic that we have within the Power BI report for us to be able to look at this and be able to, again, find this. I have used this since we've been, since I've done the tutorial and since I've done the video on YouTube about this, to be able to help understand the reports that I'm looking at for my job within Microsoft. Again, this is a big, big benefit And I think that users are going to find this to be something that's very helpful because the person consuming the report isn't always the person writing the report, right? So generate a funnel chart showing the total opportunities and their sales stages for Aqua products over the last 3 months. So the nice thing is I can ask it this, it will create a visualization. I can look at how Copilot arrived at this, what was actually used, and then I can actually go to explore the answer and I could break this out a little bit more. So that way I could take a look at the visualization. And if I wanted to, I could change this visualization. I could add additional fields to it. I could look at some of the filters. You can see it's using product code as Aqua. Well, maybe I want to change that. Maybe I want to put in a different amount. The date is for the last 3 months. Maybe I want to change that. But you can see the second I clicked on it, it also gave me a matrix of the data that I could be able to cross compare with the visualization. So I could save this. I could add it to a report. In this case, I'm not going to save it. And I'm going to go ahead and exit. So write an executive summary for the senior management team, focusing on distribution of operational results across regions. If I'm looking for how to be able to generate a summary that I might need to send via email, or I might need to showcase in a report, or to help give me a summary that I could use in a presentation, this is the data right here. And again, the wonderful thing is you'll notice how it highlights, it puts a spotlight on these specific visualizations. So that way I understand what it's trying to get me to focus on. And it's a great way for me to be able to use that context as I present to my audience. All right. So what did we just cover? Well, we covered Microsoft Fabric, Copilots in Microsoft Fabric, and data agents. We covered AI functions. We covered Power BI Copilot as well. The references for all of this, we've got a lot of videos that are up on our channel. We've got the data agents and AI skills preview, build RAG patterns simple and easy. This is where we dove into the queries. And I told you I used a nice complicated correlated query with in T-SQL to be able to get it to be able to find some results. And then I asked it to do something somewhat outside of that, but I could see that it used the same query, but it put a variation in there, which was really neat to see the agent be able to learn. The Copilot available for all capacities. This is where we review that it's now there for F2 on up, which is really, really wonderful. That also means that you could use this for a Fabric capacity Copilot as well. If you wanted to have all your Copilot charged to one capacity, you could set it at an F2 and then see how much Copilot you're actually using and not have that take away from potentially other Fabric capacities that you have that are running on your dev or on your prod system. We covered AI functions. My good buddy Dan Taylor has a video on writing AI for query insights, specifically for data warehouse, where he dives in even deeper on the Copilot that we have within data warehouse and how we can utilize it. And then, of course, the end-to-end tutorial for Power BI, which we ran through at the end. We also have a whole bunch of videos to be able to cover just about every Copilot experience that is out there. And I didn't get any questions, so I apologize. I had reserved some time for some questions, but this is Tom Hanks, so thanks.